Honourable Member for Dawson.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And we're here to speak on the government's failure to responsibly manage the economy. And we've heard from Admiral Bradbury that everything's ship-shape, the economy's all well anchored. But look, I've got to say it's very difficult for me to know where to start to criticise the government on this front. How do you choose from the vast array of economic vandalism that this government has listed on its resume? It's a laughable proposition, if only it wasn't so serious. This government's economic failure is extremely serious for those on the receiving end. For this country's forgotten families, the hard-working mums and dads out there who had to sit back and watch this government dive into the pool of money earned by the good people of this country and responsibly banked by the previous government. The families in my electorate of Dawson had to sit back and watch them splash around, spilling billions of dollars here, billions of dollars there. It's a Labor government, so they're not so concerned about a bit of spillage, a bit of waste, because waste is their middle name. And when the pool of money ran out, they borrowed more, and then they borrowed more, and then they borrowed even more money. They splash, they spill, they waste. They just keep borrowing and they just keep wasting. It's painful to watch for the families that have worked hard for that money, and even more painful for the families who will spend the rest of their working life without seeing an end to Labor's debt if this lot stay in, because this economic mismanagement continues to destroy the economy. They're a bit like a kid in the lolly store, spoilt for choice. But I will choose just three things, Mr Deputy Speaker, to focus on. They are big things that this government is responsible for. They have continued and will continue to waste money. They have cost and will cost families money. They have cost and will cost businesses money. They have cost and will cost jobs. There can be no greater example of a government determined to destroy its own economy than the Labor Greens government that is imposing the biggest, the ugliest, the most destructive carbon tax in the world. The problem with this government is its complete isolation from the people that it's supposed to represent. The Prime Minister and the Labor members in this place here this afternoon sought and got a mandate from the people not to impose a carbon tax. They did. Well, they didn't listen then, and they're certainly not listening now. They're not listening to business people who, quite justifiably, have very serious concerns about the impact that this carbon tax will have on their livelihoods. This Labor government denies the legitimate anxiety that these businesses have, knowing this tax is about to come in and hit them very, very hard. This is what business and industry is saying out in the real world. The National Generators Forum, the peak body of Australia's power industry, said the carbon tax will, and I quote, produce virtually no change in emissions from the generation sector while imposing huge costs on the community, trade-exposed industries and electricity generators. After looking at the legislation this government introduced and passed, they said it would almost double the wholesale price of electricity to $100 per megawatt hour by 2020. The Labor government either doesn't listen or it doesn't care, probably both, about what this will do to businesses and the families that are employed by them. Businesses in my electorate of Dawson have already made decisions to halt investment. Take, for example, Werner Engineering, a business that has been around for 3 decades in the Mackay region, servicing the agricultural and resource sectors. I spoke to their manager, Chris Geach, about his planned relocation and expansion, a multi-million-dollar one they were going to do. They've had to put it on hold. Shame. The increased cost that his local business, Australian-based business, will have to pay under the carbon tax won't be paid by his international competitors. And you can't blame business for being against this carbon tax. Nope. But it's not just business. It's the families, it's the workers that are employed, or soon to be not employed by them who hate it as well. It's no wonder that more than 94% of people who returned a survey that I put out in my electorate say they are opposed to the carbon tax. 94%? 6,000 people responded, 94% against. But as big and as ugly and as economically destructive as the carbon tax is, it is just one method this government is using to bring the economy to its knees. Everything this government touches it stuffs up. As the Leader of the Opposition says, it's like the Midas touch in reverse. But in fact, it's actually worse than the Midas touch in reverse, because the government even manages to stuff up the economy with what they don't touch. The one time that they should have done something, the one time that they should have stepped in, they didn't. Qantas and the flying public needed the government to act, and they did not act. They sat on their hands and they did nothing. Probably too scared to do anything, because they know what happens when they do something. But doing nothing just punched another big fat hole in the economy. It punched another big hole in business, in the Whitsundays, in the electorate of Dawson. Times are already tough as they were during the pilot strike of 1989. They are suffering from the high Aussie dollar and the legacy of the summer of natural disasters. Whitsundays relies on tourism, and by allowing this situation with Qantas and the industrial dispute to get so out of control that the national carrier's entire fleet was grounded, this government just knocked the stuffing. It just knocked the stuffing out of even more Whitsunday businesses. Well, Qantas-linked flights, thankfully, continued into the Whitsundays. But I've got to tell you, Mr Deputy Speaker, there are a lot of empty seats. No connections means no passengers, and no passengers means no business, and that means someone's out of pocket. A family is out of pocket. How much more damage does this government want to do to the economy in the Whitsundays? They can't wait for the carbon tax up there, I can tell you. They can't wait. I would also like to refer to the damage that's been caused to job-creating investment proposals in North Queensland by the rigid regulations of the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Approvals process. Let me just point to one example here, one very big example. The multi-billion-dollar Abbott Point multi-cargo facility project. This project, which has the capacity to generate thousands of jobs and see an increase in population and services into the town of Bowen, has been held up by the Federal Environment Department awaiting EPBC approval since December last year. Literally nothing has happened to what would be one of the biggest projects of all in Northern Australia. And each month the project proponents are told, well, next month you'll get the approval. The approval's coming, the approval's coming, it's coming. Well, so is Christmas, for a second time round for this proposal. Next month it will be a year that the project has sat there stagnant because of the federal government's delays. And here's a little update that's been given from the Department of Sustainability and Environment, Water, Population and Communities that came out during the Senate estimates. Bureaucrat there, Barbara Jones, Assistant Secretary to the Environment Assessment Branch 1, said the proponent, North Queensland Bulk Ports, provided a final EIS document to the department on the 6th of December last year. The department is still considering the content of that document and assessing it for nearly a year. The proponents were advised the application would be finalised in February, Mr Deputy Speaker, 9 months ago, and it's been held up because of the onerous demands to offset perceived environmental damage. Well, I've got to tell you, that's got Bob Brown's fingerprints all over it, all over it. The state government has already addressed the issue, and the proponents have agreed to 100% offset of all perceived environmental damage. 100% agreed. That was the original issue, and the agreement, you think, would be the end of the issue. But now industry sources have told me that because the department, now the department has actually gone and got UNESCO involved. UNESCO. Would you believe it? Because the project's off the coast of the Great Barrier Reef. Now we have some bureaucrat in some United Nations office sitting over there in Paris with his little red pen, probably daydreaming about a holiday in the Bahamas or somewhere, and he's more concerned about that or what he's going to have for lunch, really, than creating jobs in North Queensland. And the department basically confirmed this when they told Senate estimates that, you know, while they wouldn't use the word referral because of the connotations that's got, they do, and they are basically notifying UNESCO bureaucrats in Paris about job-creating projects in North Queensland. Well, who is running this country? Who is running it? The Labor Party, who couldn't care about business, investment or the economy, quite clearly. Is it the Greens, who want to completely shut it all down? You know, if a Labor government is taking its economic policy from the Greens, then it's just a matter of time before there's no economy in North Queensland, and the rest of the country won't be far behind it.